Thank you for joining us today. My name is Gail Watson, President and CEO of Women Speakers Association, the go-to place for innovative leaders, change agents, and women with a message to connect, to collaborate, and grow her visibility worldwide in order to fulfill her mission. And as part of helping her to fulfill this mission, we are very excited to introduce you to the book, Voices of the 21st Century. It's featuring a collection of female voices rising up to educate, to guide, and inspire. And here with us today is our featured author, Anita Russell, a bold, brave, and brilliant woman who shares a powerful story. And I'd like to welcome you to the show, Anita.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. I love your story that you share. And more importantly, I love that you really take on a pretty heavy emotion. You start to work with guilt and you start to really get in and challenge the status quo. I'd love for you to share with our viewers today what has inspired you to share your story in Voices of the 21st Century.
Well, first of all, I really like the whole concept of voices in the 21st century because I have a tendency to think of voices simply as human stories. And so when we find our own voice and we're able to tell our story, it can have major, major impacts on ourselves as well as on other people. And so when I saw this opportunity, I didn't hesitate to kind of jump on it. And it's also serving as a platform for me for my very first solo project, which I launched earlier this year. And it's a book called I Want to See Lainey's House. And the segment that I actually wrote in the Voices of 21st connects directly to that book. It's sort of like an offshoot of that particular book. So I'm very, very happy that I had this opportunity.
I love it. And you talked about how sharing that story, it's about how it's impacted. You want to help impact other people's lives, but it's also had a huge impact on your life. Maybe we can dive in a little bit about your story and how it's impacted your life personally.
Yeah, absolutely. The major thing is finding out about who I am and really discovering who I am on a very deep inner level. And in order for me to do that, I needed to sort of start diminishing the echoes in my life and just not listening to those external voices and just really turning myself completely inward to be able to understand who I am. I had a very tragic experience at a very young age, and that experience reshaped me in a lot of ways. Sometimes I feel like I came into the world one way, and then when that tragedy happened, it reshaped me and it pointed me in a very different direction. And a lot of that ended up being along the lines of depression, along the lines of guilt. So I actually developed a guilt complex within myself that took me years to really, number one, to understand that it was even there. And number two, to figure out how to get rid of it. And ultimately, me figuring out how to, not so much get rid of it, but I want to say manage it is probably a better way of looking at it. But it took me from the time that I was 5 years old when I had this tragic experience in my life all the way up until about a year ago when I really began to get a handle on the role that guilt played in my life and was causing me to make decisions that were not in my best interest.
Yeah, and that doesn't usually have a good outcome when we make those decisions.
Not at all. Not at all.
Who needs to be reading your story, Anita?
I think anybody who finds themselves in a position where they feel like they need to rediscover themselves. And I think as we grow, we go through different phases of life. So for example, the book that I mentioned earlier, I Want to See Lainey's House, that book has 5 chapters, and each one of those chapters represents a very distinct phase of development in my life. And over the course of time, there were so many lessons that I learned. There were so many aspects of myself that I discovered. And every time I discovered a new aspect of myself, it was like I had to redesign myself all over again. So anybody out there who is experiencing some inner struggles, maybe somebody who had an experience, a tragic experience in their own life, somebody who may have experienced trauma at one point in their lives, or just somebody who is just waking up one day and just feeling unhappy and can't figure out why they're unhappy. So I think my story is an example of what can happen when you make the choice that I don't want to live like this. I want to live like this. So it really made me shift from I'm just living day to day and surviving to I want to thrive in my life. And as I mentioned earlier, to me, that's having a holistic approach to my mind, my body, and my spirit. So anybody who wants to have that way of re-looking at their lives, redesigning their lives, this book is definitely, or this chapter and is definitely for them.
Now you talk about your independent book where you dive a lot deeper into your story. And the title of that book again is called?
The independent book is called I Want to See Lainey's House.
I Want to See Lainey's House.
Yes.
What's that title about?
It's really interesting because I started writing that book back in 2015. And I submitted the manuscript for the book in 2018, the very end of 2018. So it took me about 3.5 years almost to write the book. And throughout most of the writing of that book, I had no idea what the title was going to be until 2017 rolled around, and I found myself in a position where I was dealing with a completely unexpected situation with regard to my mother. And my mother, I discovered, was diagnosed as stage 4 metastasized breast cancer. And it hit me just out of the blue. And so I watched my mother go through that end of life phase, which was very, very difficult. But during the course of her going through all of that, she began to talk to my brothers and I, and she began to talk to us about things that she had never shared with us before. And during one of those conversations, and it was the conversation where she was literally talking about her death, and she made a statement, and the statement that she made was, I want to see Lainey's house. And when she said that, I knew immediately that that was the title of my book. And so the whole sort of the subtitle, because that book really is a sibling story. I started off with a sister, and here I am, 62 years old. I lost that sister at a very, very young age, and that loss completely impacted my life. And when my mom spoke those words, I knew that that was to be the title of the book.
Oh my goodness, that just sends shivers throughout my body.
Yes.
What a beautiful, beautiful gift from your mother. I want to see Lainey's house. Oh, that's so awesome. Well, as we can hear, you've gone through a lot. But what's really beautiful about you is you have transformed it. You've received the gifts from it and now are out there to help others. Yeah. Is there any words of wisdom that you would like to pass on to the listener right now that's listening to some of your words that went, yes, that's me. I have that guilt. I'm waking up not knowing who I am.
Yes. So the name of my company is The Place to Soar. And SOAR is actually an acronym for Step Out and Redesign. And that came to me back in going into like 2013, 2014, when I made the decision to leave corporate America. That was a very, that was a tough decision for me to make. But in the end, I knew that God was pulling me in a very different direction in my life. And so this whole concept of redesigning your life began to emerge. Because when I left corporate America, that's exactly what I was doing, was redesigning my life. I took the old blueprint and I introduced a completely new blueprint. And so step out and redesign is basically the message that I want to carry over to people. And going through life transitions, managing relationships, new ones, old ones, and all of that, it's all a part of life. But at the same time, if you want to continue to move forward, there are going to be those moments where you have to kind of look at things with new eyes. You have to look at things with a whole new perspective and begin to look and move forward in a way that you may not have considered in the past. So the bottom line is always do more to soar.
Do more to soar. I love it. That's okay. I know that, I mean, as you're talking and you were describing, if you're someone who's going through transition, if you're going through a job change, if you're going through a relationship change, I mean, that's all of us that are listening to you right now. We all go through transition. This would be an amazing book, definitely, to read and learn from. But you know what? I'm just also thinking that we have friends, you know, our girlfriends out there come to us and want to park themselves on our couch and chat about some of the challenges that they're facing. I can't think of a more empowering gift, a tangible piece to give somebody would be to give them that story, to let them know you're not alone. And here's some strategies to help you get through it. And would it be possible if we contacted you directly to get a copy of the book? Would it be possible that you actually even personalized a message to the receiver?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because essentially that's what I do now. People either buy my book via Amazon or what have you, but I also like being able to sell my book and sit down and have conversations with people about how that book came into fruition, number one. But then also after a person has purchased that book, I've actually had the opportunity to sit down with people and they've shared with me the impact that that book, and I'm referring to my the solo project, that book has had on people. And so I am so gratified to be able to do that. And I make it a point to personalize the book all the time. So that would not be a problem. And the way to get in touch with me is very easy through email, if that's what you choose. And my email address is info@theplacetosoar.com. Or if you want to find me on social media, all you have to do is put in my name, Anita D. Russell. So if you're looking at me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, I use the same name across the board because I think that makes it a little bit easier for people.
Okay, Anita D. Russell on social media and info@theplacetosoar.com.
Yeah.
Well, Anita, thank you so much for putting yourself out there as really a heart, a light and so accessible. You know, I really, really appreciate that you're just, I mean, you really feel from you that you do want to help and make people feel like they're seen and they're heard. So I really appreciate that gift in you. It's beautiful.
Yes, and I want to thank you also for even making this project possible. I love the whole idea of doing collaborative writing projects in that. And so I want to just thank you so much for, you know, accepting me as a part of this project. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And see, it's a love fest here. Okay. All right. I want to thank you again for sharing your heart with us today, Anita, and to our listeners today. I want to thank you for joining us, and I look forward to sharing more amazing women with you and their fantastic stories. We're just here to serve. So wherever you are in this world, we wish you a great day.
Absolutely.